Alrighty. Going to go over little bits of different methods here, starting with applying one of them because it's extra steps, but getting sprue goo and using that to just kind of shove it around the weapon and dripping down like chunks of like decaying and decrepit meat and gore. So it's a little fickle because I already primed and it was an afterthought when I was doing this to do it with the sprue goo, so it has trouble adhesing at first, but that's still fine. It once it settles in, it's fine. I just primed it and then re-dry brushed the white over it and before painting it after this step. But you could use a toothpick or like a skewer, anything like what I'm doing here, where I'm just kind of shoving it around and pulling it down in the directions I want it to be falling, and I want it to look like it's flowing. Um, and so you just kind of go through and drag the strands around how you think it would be falling or sloshing about. This method's fun because it gives me like a foundation when I go to apply the glue, like Uhu glue and things like that early, like later, I should say. Um, to make sprue goo how I did, I just cut up chunks of like Citadel, like G-dubs plastic sprues, very small, and then put them into a pile at the bottom of a masonry jar and filled that with 100% acetone until it was maybe like half a centimeter, uh, maybe a little bit more, but like half a centimeter over all of the sprues, and then left that overnight, and it just kind of liquefies it into this texture here. And then that's about the gist. Lighting's not perfect, so sorry, but this is where we're at. But I think I'm content with that. There's some chunks and whatnot, and yeah, so I'll catch up and start painting that with the other two Marines here in a moment. And then I started on the flail, the light flail looking Marine, just because I wanted to try to do all three of them in one go, and I didn't want to get too excessive with this one. I use Tester's glue instead of Uhu glue because I don't have Uhu glue. I have to order it, and Tester's I can pick up at like local hobby stores, so it's a little bit easier for me to get. It doesn't string as easily as Uhu glue does, but if you just let it set for a while and mix it, which you'll see me doing here, it works. It does the job. Um, I hate these tubes because, quick warning, once you start getting glue out, it will not stop. It will just keep pouring, so you have to like rush to shove the lid back on to try to like save it. There is no clean or nice way to do that most of the time. And then this little blood like vial here is just blood for the blood god. I just thin it and put all of my Citadel paints in the dropper bottles. And I'll put 2 to 3. I decided to put 3 in this one just to make sure I get like a full consistency through and making it more red in total. Uh, and I go to also grab, periodically I do this, there will be flocking that I use. And I use that for chunks. And it's the red will stain it in a good way. But yeah, so you just mix that together and then let it sit for a while. It doesn't cure super fast, so you have time to work with it, which is the why it ends up having a similar stringy effect. And so I keep grabbing chunks, lifting them up, letting it kind of go a little bit. And I got all the red mixed throughout it, so I'll leave that for a moment to mix with the paint. When I go to clean off the little skewer I use, I twist it like so, because it helps get most of what's there sticking on whatever surface I'm trying to get it to stick on, be it the model or still on my little pseudo palette here. But taking the flocking, I take a dark green, and I will take just a little bit. I didn't use a whole lot this time. You could use more or less. If you use more, it kind of looks like how the gore in the Doom movie with The Rock looks, where there's a bunch of those speckles of like dark, like grittiness, like blood cots dried up all throughout it and whatnot. So you could do more or less whatever you think you want to try to do. I just did a little bit here. And then I'll mix those around. The blood for the blood god will stain it and make it like a very, very dark reddish green. The green shows through very slightly, so it ends up looking just kind of like infected or like sickly clotted blood. So however you want to get that mixed in with the gore chunks, just more or less is fine. and then get a little bit. It'll string some, so you'll twist and pull to just try to get a little bit on the end of the skewer, and we'll just drag it across when we start applying it, and I go back and forth to try to keep getting it to like string between where I want these strands to go, and then I will grab little pieces and just keep doing that, just pulling it back and forth between where I want the little strands going, dragging it down into parts where I want it to look like it's dripping. If there's excess little strings, they'll curl, so I try to twist the skewer to like pull those up and not have too much just kind of dangling in random directions. Um, but yeah, I'm trying to cover all around the back a little bit here and on all three of the bells that make up this flail, so that way it looks like there's still some chunk of whoever was hit still reminiscing. And yeah, so for this one, I just wanted to be a little more subtle. I didn't want to go too wild with it, and figured that would be fine. I end up cleaning, if I remember correctly here shortly, I was restringing parts of it. I think I pull that back up to the top and back around. Yeah, I do right there. And just trying to give it what texture I want. You can play with it as much as you want, as little as you want. It's like an additive process, so you can add more to thicken strands if you'd like after they've set. And then right here, there's the little I forget the dongle for the bells. My brain's not working. So I cleaned up around that because I wanted it to be more visual if you looked at the model from the bottom and not just have it be completely covered with gore. But I'm content with his, so I'll move on to the next. So we're grabbing the champion for the unit, which I give a power fist and a shield to, just because he's to be used with a heavy bubotic weapon, which is just the power fist for the Plague Marines functionally. And so I'm gonna make it look like he's grabbed somebody and just kind of skewer them on these spikes on his shield. So I'm gonna go through and put chunks of this on, drag it down the sides of the shield, and make it look like there's the reminiscent of those spikes taking chunks with them. This is over the base where he's holding the shield, so whenever there's chunks of the gore that I do over a base, I like to follow that by putting some gore beneath it and then having like a blood trail or a trail of like chunks flow back from kind of where I think his arm would be swaying or going. And I just, to do that also, well, the same twisting method like I do to get it on the pallet or on pieces, and then drag it in the direction you think it would be coming from or going, so you kind of get like a flow look to it. And I'm pretty content with that little bit there. Oh, my spine. And so I'm going to attach a little bit to the claws of the power claw here to make it look like he sunk his fingers into somebody to pull them in for that check. And I'm not going to go too much in the palm. I just want to focus this on the claws. Try to get the strings in between some of the fingers so there's just that like look of, you know, viscera still hanging on from how he grabbed someone. Little twists. A lot of it's just kind of sporadic vibes and feels for what I think looks nice at the time. I don't really get too in depth with like how I plan for any of the gore to flow. And his hand is above the base, so I do the same thing. As much as his shoulder's covering it up right now, I'm doing the putting just gore beneath him and then dragging it back from the direction I have him presumably walking from. And so for the big chunks, that's essentially just what I'm doing, so I can do a trail later when I come back into this with Blood for the Blood God. I will go over all of the parts that have the gore on them to re-gloss them, add a little bit more red, and then I can do like dripping blood looking thinner on pieces. And so this is the one with the Uhu glue. We're going to go over to that, and I've already painted it so we can see the different like colors, the purples, pinks, and whatnot here to make it look corroded and nasty. I'm just going to take big chunks of this and put it over. It will cover handfuls of chunks. I'm notorious for covering up details I make just because I'm a problem. But I also like what little bit shines through, I think gives them more depth. And so I'm just going to drag this all around where chunks are going, would be dripping from when he like hucks the axe back up onto his shoulder. And kind of just, I don't follow it exactly. I go over it on some pieces or, you know, under it on some, and I just kind of, it's all there to be a similar situation. So I have some here dragging on his arm, but I didn't get any of the uhu, or the, sprue goo on his arm there, so I'm just adding that essentially in post. And we're going to get a little chunk because I ended up mixing a little bit too little, but that's fine because again, this is all just for variation. And I'm going to drag this across onto the pieces of his armor on the inside where he has it pulled up. And there's a little bit I can't quite get uh, underneath of his arm on a shoulder pad, and I end up covering that with a little bit of blood for the blood god in the after part when I'm just putting like the drips and such. I did try to record that, and I had accidentally hit stream, so I have a very quiet and muted like 5 minute stream on my VODs where I did that because I didn't record it. So this is most of my little process and tutorial. You could do this with Uhu Glue and a handful of other ways. However you do, just enjoy and play with it.